All right, joining me now here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is Gaius Publius. Gaius is a writer and contributing editor to AmericaBlog, which you can find at AmericaBlog.com. You can also find him on Twitter at Gaius_Publius. Gaius, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you very much, Matt, and thank you for that underscore. It's a tricky one.
Yeah, exactly. You got to remember where, it's again, there's dashes, underscores, it's an underscore, Gaius_Publius. So Gaius, you recently wrote about how Senator Bernie Sanders issued frankly a dire warning and frankly a call to arms about the fact that he believes that President Barack Obama has intentions on re-pursuing the, quote, grand bargain in the upcoming lame duck Congress. Tell us all about it.
Well, the grand bargain has been rebranded as the fiscal cliff, which makes it sound even more dire. This is from the Huffington Post. There's concern among Democrats, the lead says, that President Barack Obama will make a deal with Senate Republicans during the lame duck session, and then there's a bunch of paragraphs where Obama says, well, no, maybe not. I'm open to doing other things as well. The sort of wishy-washy stuff.
Right.
And then a quote from Sanders at the bottom says, Sanders is worried that this is exactly what's going to happen. Everything being equal, unless we stop it, this is quoting Sanders, unless we stop it, what will happen is there will be a quote-unquote grand bargain after the election in which the White House and some Democrats will sit down with Republicans and move to a changed CPI, which is a cost of living adjustment, a change to the cost of living adjustment in Social Security that will, in effect, cut benefits. It's one of the two ways benefit cuts are being envisioned under Social Security, the other being extending the retirement age.
So a chained CPI. Let's go into a little more detail. What exactly does a chained CPI mean, and how exactly would it work?
Well, so I can give you the broad strokes, and I can tell you what the elite consensus says the effect will be. I think the effect will be worse. The broad strokes is, let's say every month, the government figures out what the cost of living is by looking at what's called a basket of commodities that consumers buy, and that basket is the same from month to month, so that you get an apples-to-apples comparison. So let's say that basket includes X amount of beef, X amount of chicken, X amount of cornflakes, soap powder, whatever it is. And it's sort of like the Dow Jones Industrial Average. They price that every month. They figure the cost of living has moved in one direction or the other. And at certain fixed points, they change the cost of living adjustment for federal programs, such as Social Security. And I believe that's yearly. So change CPI says, well, what consumers really do is when meat goes up, they buy more chicken. So what they're constantly doing is adjusting, instead of holding that basket constant, they're adjusting the relative value of its components so that the lower-priced item is weighted more heavily than the higher-priced alternative, which means that you're always seeking to minimize the actual cost of living. Whether that reflects reality or not, who knows? But it's a way.
It's not who knows. We know it doesn't reflect reality. Let's be fair. It probably does not really reflect reality for the most part.
I appreciate your fairness.
Yeah.
I was being polite, but yes, it doesn't reflect reality. It reflects the attempt of the government to just minimize the dollars going out because the government is starved because they won't tax rich people.
Right. So obviously, Obama was well and good to gut these things with the grand bargain before. Republicans didn't let it happen because they're out of their minds. However, there is actually a little more news on this that you wrote about, is that David Koch apparently is on board with this. Tell us about that.
Yes. First, a little background on David Koch. I've written earlier, not much earlier, but earlier, that I think David Koch is turning into the operational head of the Republican Party. He's, via funding of Americans for Prosperity candidates, he's basically got his people in place for what I've been calling a sort of a corporate takeover, a hostile takeover of the Republican Party. So David Koch isn't just David Koch in this context. He speaks for all of the teabagger Republicans who, as we're looking, are turning into the face of the Republican Party itself. So David Koch says he will accept tax revenues, and I went back today to look that up. He actually said tax increases. That's words out of his mouth, which means that the fig leaf is now off. We have to guess, and I think you and I both know that that guess isn't much of a guess, whether Obama really wants a balanced approach where he protects Social Security, though he won't say he'll do it, or whether Obama is using the balanced approach as a way of getting at things that he's wanted since at least 2006, when he gave that address to the Hamilton Project. He wants to do what the mainstream elite consensus wants to do, which is to cut back the safety net and find a way to do it. There's news on Friday. Howard Feynman said on Chris Matthews' show that he thinks Feynman now being a water carrier for everybody that whispers in his little ear. He thinks that voters want don't want Republicans to cut Medicare. They want Democrats to do it. And Digby has taken that as a signal that that's where the village, in her terminology, is at right now. That Democrats have to do it. She thinks, I think, Krugman thinks, as of his column this morning, that if Democrats touch this stuff, it's the end of the road for the Democratic Party. It's quite possible that they think they can get away with it if they can keep the waters muddy enough, Obama, and keep their fingerprints off of it. So that's what the dance is about. It's not a fiscal dance; it's a political dance.
Again, it's so crazy to me to watch this whole dance take place, where especially when you have. If you're a progressive, honestly, if you're a progressive, Mitt Romney is the candidate you'd want to run against because he's so ridiculous and his policies are so crazy. And Paul Ryan, again, literally, you have the exact opposite of what you should be, what as a progressive, what the country actually wants, because the country doesn't want Medicare cut, they don't want Social Security cut, they don't want Medicaid cut, they don't want any of these things cut, and so you have this perfect person to run against, and instead of just flat out saying, hey, we are going to no cuts to Social Security, no cuts to Medicare, no cuts to Medicaid, we are going to defend the social safety net. You have this muddied response, and there's a reason it's muddied, and the reason is we should be scared, because if there is no political purpose for Obama and Democrats not to run full on against it if they weren't planning to do this, because it's such a political winner. At least that's the way I see this, because it's such a political winner to do the exact opposite, that it's political suicide not to do the opposite. It's the only reason they're not going full on 180 to this is that they actually do intend to actually do these cuts when the lame duck comes around. You probably would agree with that, right?
Very clear-eyed of you, Matt. Very clear-eyed. Yes, it's a huge tell. In fact, I was in a conference call with some of the online people in the campaign, off the record, so I can't quote anything, and I certainly wouldn't want to. But when I mentioned how easy it would be for Obama to put these things to rest. What I got quoted back at me was just simply what Obama's on the record is already saying, which is this weasel stuff. And the weasel stuff is a huge tell. You know that he's going to try to do it again. I'm just absolutely convinced he's going to try to do it again, and it's up to us to stop him. I think our biggest ally in stopping him, if you want to move on to that for a second, might be twofold. One that's happening publicly, and one that I've been recommending that I don't see any effort to do. The one that's happening publicly is Senator Sanders. As we go back to this, 29 senators are on the record as saying they won't vote for anything that cuts Social Security. And I assume they mean Medicare and Medicaid as well, because they're talking about safety nets. 29 is not enough. They need 41. So there's a huge push to get 41 senators on the record on this. We've got a nice little column from Paul Krugman that's going to give kind of oomph to that basically defines, coming out of the election, if Obama wins, this is his mandate, to not cut these things. Very, very clear dividing line. I recommend this Krugman column called The Real Referendum to everybody who's listening. The second thing that people could do is just every time Obama raises his head, he's got to face the people during campaign season. Have somebody in the audience say, Mr. Obama, will you unequivocally state that you will veto any bill that includes cuts to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
Yeah.
And let him weasel. Let him do it in front of the cameras until he gets too embarrassed not to. This is the time to put him on the record, and I don't know why there's not a vigorous effort following him around that attempts to make him wimp out or embarrass out or say, drop the coin in the slot and say, I will not cut Social Security, even via chain CPI or extension of benefits. Anyway,
I think. Yeah, no, it is a battle. And again, like what I've talked about several times on the show is, and like you're saying right now, that election season is actually the time to actually ask for these things, because again, once Obama is reelected, he doesn't need your vote anymore. And the simple truth is, if you look at the CTU strike, the Chicago Teachers Union strike, the fact that they did it in an election season actually was much to their benefit. They actually got more. I'm sure, got more than they would have gotten if they would have waited till after the election. But again, the main point being is there needs to be pressure on it, and the fact is how can we get people who are going to vote for Obama to actually put that pressure on? Because obviously you have people who are like you and myself and Paul Krugman, thankfully, and Digby writing about this stuff. But I think there's this sense of denial from a lot of, there's obviously a sense of denial from a lot of Democrats who think, oh no, he would never do that. Oh no, Obama would never do that. How can we convince them, other than again, showing them these quotes and showing them these articles, that no, he actually wants to do this and is planning to?
Well, I would think that this is a period, this kind of period is a period where mainstream Democrats, the neoliberals who are the Robert Rubinites who are selling out, who are Clintonized, who have Clintonized the party. This is the time when progressives get shamed into silence by those kind of Democrats, by the mainstream Democrats. This is actually, the reason for that is this is the time when progressives have the most power. And
right.
If progressives ever realized they had power at a time like this and used it, you don't need a big organized movement. If you're an Illinois progressive and you got 10 friends and Obama's making 4 appearances in Illinois, you can show up with your 10 friends. You don't have to ask Nancy Pelosi's permission to show up at an Obama event and ask questions. You can do
right.
it on your own. And I'm kind of in favor these days. I've been writing about effective progressive coalitions of cadre-led movements of activists who simply do things. And if that doesn't work, do something else. You don't betray your brothers and sisters in other parts of the movement, and you take an opportunity and you act. Removing the branding, which is the face mask, the painted mask from a Democrat, is one of the most threatening acts you can do to them, because it removes their fundraising. So go to public events and remove their branding. Put them on the spot. Make them declare themselves. You don't need 100 people to do that.
Right. Again, I'm talking to Gaius Publius from AmericaBlog, AmericaBlog.com. You can find him on Twitter at Gaius_Publius. So, okay, we have 29 senators who are currently saying they will not vote for cuts to Social Security. Where are we in the House? Because, I saw something that there is a chance that, there is the increasing chance that the Democrats may retake the House. But in your report, you said that Nancy Pelosi appears to be on board with this fiscal cliff grand bargain scheme. How are we in the House? How does that actually stand?
Well, it's kind of hard to say what Nancy Pelosi's on board with. She said something that is easily read one way, and then she explained it another way. Which is to say, she was trying to move the conversation. She figures that she's going to put an offer on the table that will be refused, and therefore she hasn't moved the needle in the wrong direction. I don't know what's in Nancy Pelosi's head. It certainly read as if she was preemptively caving on the $250,000 number, which makes the
right.
discussion about the $250,000 number not about the real Bush tax cuts, which is the all-or-nothing number. In order to get an extension of the Bush tax cuts for the middle class, the Democrats have to commit to the default position, which is easily attainable. Let them all expire, and then come back in January and say, here's the Obama tax cuts for the middle class. If they're not willing to do that, then it's kind of over, and it looks like Nancy Pelosi is not willing to do that. So let's say the Democrats lose the House or continue to not own the House. Then all the action is in Senate filibuster and Obama's veto. That's simply the only places you can go. If the Democrats take the House, then you've got an opportunity for progressives to sort of grab their man parts and act. But we've
right.
seen that progressives don't seem to do that in the House, which is why I've been kind of recommending something I'm calling an open rebellion coalition. It's a fanciful idea, but it's an idea that at some point progressives in Congress are going to have to say, look, there's this coalition of groups within the Democratic Party that gives everybody a voice, including the Dennis Kuciniches, but basically locks the dysfunctional Democratic family into the same route. Daddy goes to work drunk every day. And every child in that family has a role in making sure that he's dressed, he's out the door, his everything is combed. And the whiny child, mommy says yes to the whiny child. Yes, dear, it's terrible, isn't it? Well, people have to break that cycle of codependency, and the people who break it ought to be progressives. I would love to see a bunch of progressives in the Senate and in the House form an explicitly named Open Rebellion Caucus. We are an open rebellion against Reubenite leadership, neoliberal leadership, and instead of being in quiet, co-opted rebellion, which is what they ought to be an open rebellion, say so, and join the battle. I mean, that's what we want Democrats to do to Republicans. We should be willing to do that to Democrats when Democrats are wrong. Join the battle openly.
Exactly, and you know, ideally, that's what you'd want in a country where you actually have lots of different ideas being discussed and actually having a coalition of people standing strong together and saying, no, this is the way these programs should go. This is how we should govern. This is how our country should be. That doesn't seem like it's something that's that hard to do. But obviously, you know, most Democrats are either sellouts or cowards. And again, without except for the few exceptions that we've talked about before.
Well, I would say sellouts for sure because you can follow the money. That has to do with how expensive campaigns are. Whether people are cowards or just they've learned helplessness, or everybody, you know, we're a social species. You get into a group and you kind of want to go along to get along. You know, you're in Congress for 12 years and you're kind of part of that system. I'm not sure what the motives are, but the effect is the same. I would agree that the effect is the same. We need an open rebellion caucus, or we progressives, or we're not going to get anywhere. The benefit is that the progressive ideas are wildly popular in the country. The elites, the Our Betters group, is way far to the right of where almost all of the country is on the issues, if you don't identify them as Democratic or Republican issues. Tax cuts on the wealthy ought to go away. There's a huge consensus for that. Raising taxes on the wealthy, there's a huge consensus for that. Increasing Social Security benefits, especially in a downturn, huge consensus for that. Single payer, if it were explained properly. If Obama had come out for Medicare plus 5%, open to everybody. That's my Obamacare plan. We open Medicare to everybody, and it's cost plus 5%. How easily explained? How popular would that have been?
Yeah,
hugely. So, but that's me, and I'm one guy sitting in a room writing into the wind.
Well, it's really great writing and really great stuff. Gaius Publius, writer and contributing editor for AmericaBlog. You can find that at AmericaBlog.com. You can also and should follow him on Twitter at Gaius_Publius. Again, it's really great work. As always, Gaius, it's wonderful writing, wonderful activism. It's something that, again, I think both you and I agree that progressives should be on the offense here, and especially during election season. We have a president who's recently claimed that he is a blue dog. We should take him at his word and make him do more than and make him actually make a pledge on this kind of stuff. So great work. Thanks so much for what you're doing, and thanks for being on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Matt. Thank you very much.